Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix's 406th film from 2021. It's the Mexican comedy called Bankrolled, or in Spanish it's Fondeados. It's directed by Marcos Bucay and stars Aldo Escalante, Ricardo, Polanco, and Natalia. Torres. I am Jesse. I am your host. I do apologize for my Spanish pronunciations. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully we know what film we are discussing today. As always, if this is a film that you haven't seen and you're interested in checking it out, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because as we've sort of seen the last week or so, this is a special episode in our December run through to Christmas it's a special gift for our listeners. So hopefully you're enjoying hearing me a couple of extra times a week. Other than that, we get into the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about two friends who want to break into the tech world. They come up with an idea, but have no idea how to make the app. Wow, there we go. Intriguing. So many hilarious moments that could come from that situation. So let's see what we could find out about how this one ended up on Netflix. And realistically, very, very little for this international film. This did hit Netflix on the 23rd of July, 2021. It was filmed in Mexico City, in Mexico, and around the world. This has a variety of different titles. So Bankrolled is obviously the idea that these guys are cashed up or funded for their idea. The original Spanish title of Fondeados, it means anchored. So in English, it's anchored. In Portuguese, it's called app, A-P-P in capital letters, ported. So apported. So it ties in with the idea of the app that they need to make. In French, it's called jackpots. Yeah, sure. In Croatian, it's called funded. In Czech, it's called startup money. These all give us a little bit more information about the film. In Norwegian, it's called initial capital. Funny title. In Finnish, it's called money men. In Greek and Romanian, it's called funded by mistake. I guess that's a little bit of an interpretation. They weren't funded by mistake in the first place. But anyway, in Hungarian, it's called thrown together from common money. Big title there. In Hindi, it's called funds received. In Italian, it's funded by chance. In Japanese, it's called outrageous funding. In Polish, it's called financed. In Russian, it's called collected. In Chinese, it's called crowdfunding for alcohol. I thought that was quite funny, because yes, they do use some of the money for alcohol. In Turkish, it's called crazy project. And in Vietnamese, it's called flooded with capital. There we go. So it all ties in the idea that these guys have been funded to do their work, and they're probably not doing a very good job with it. Let's look at what the critics and audiences are saying about this film. As we do see with some of the international films, there's not much to go on. On Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't have a consensus from audiences or critics. It only has 3 critic reviews. 2 of those are fresh, one's rotten. On IMDb, it only has 376 ratings. So on the low end, it sits at a 4.2 out of 10. That is also on the low end. On Letterboxd, it's a 2.6 out of 5. And that's only on 576 ratings, and has only been logged by 746 people. So not a lot of people outside of Mexico, I would say, have seen this film. Let's get into my early thoughts. What do I think about this film? I think the 2 leads, they do a good enough job. I think it's just the whole film is off key the whole way. Like, it uses all the conventions of a comedy film, but there's very little humor. None of the humor for me landed, and the references to the tech world don't make a film. Yes, you can have lots of clever references to every single app or technology you can think of, but it doesn't make the film a well-structured film. So I'm going to be a little bit negative on this one, but let's talk about the characters in this film. Let's talk about our protagonists, our 2 main characters. So Polo Rios, he is, I think, the character we're supposed to connect with the most. He's this guy who comes across as sort of switched on and intelligent, but also desperate to fit in with the tech bros almost. And he wants to make the next best thing, but doesn't have the ability to follow through. That's a big issue with him. He doesn't have the money or the backing, and he doesn't even have an idea. So realistically, he's got very little chance. And he's in this meaningless relationship with this gym junkie fanatic chick who constantly calls him fatty throughout the film, even though when the audience joins him at the start of the film, he's lost like 90 kilos or something, and he's got stretch marks to prove it, but she's still horrible, and sort of comes through that she's using and abusing him for her own social media. So obviously it ties in with the overall themes of this film too. His best friend, Blas, we're going to talk about him in a second, but he's constantly disappointed in his mate Polo, in his work, avoidance, and lack of morals in how he does get that work done too. And Blas we'll get into now. He's living in Polo's apartment. Polo's girlfriend doesn't like Blas. She calls him like a slob. But he's also a little bit slack, I guess, alongside Polos. But Blas is very talented in programming and the computer side of things. And I think he has more morals and a moral compass that he wants to ensure whatever they make or create is doing it for the right thing. So I guess the tech world in the way that this film portrays it doesn't necessarily do that. So his ambition, I guess, is to be a barista because he thinks he knows everything about coffee, and coffee to him can create great taste and things like that. He's a disappointment to his parents. His parents see him as a 30-something-year-old who's had no massive career achievements, and they look at people like their grandson, I think, because I think it's Blas's nephew who's on social media, who gets recognition, and all these young people that are getting recognition from the technology world, and Blas can't seem to do it, even though he's talented. The other characters in this film, Natalia and her friend Mate. They are the actual professionals that work at this business called Bankrolled, who are set up to help the boys with their Sign Now app that they've created, which is to get people to like cultural and activism sort of causes and things like that. And they're interesting characters. Natalia is probably the better of the two characters. She's the one that is dedicated to her work and the company, and this Bankrolled company and their boss, they're struggling. They need success. They've had too many failures, and Natalia feels that, or Nat feels that pressure. So she's seen as a stress head, and she tries to listen to self-help audio or podcasts to calm herself down, and that often doesn't work because her phone controls her and what she does and everything that happens. And unfortunately for her, maybe she finds something attractive in Polos, and they hit it off a little bit, and he tries to help her control her stress and her obsessions, and she goes a little bit investigative and looks into his actual app and his background, and there's a bit of conflict there, but there's a little bit of hopefulness at the end as well, because Nat is probably one of the nicer characters in this film compared to her colleague or co-worker Mate, who is there to drop in crass, disgusting lines, and that's all I can really say about her. The last character I'll discuss is Tellez. He is a drug dealer friend of Polo and Blas, and he literally just gives them drugs that they need to go on this high to come up with this idea. The drugs, they're not illegal apparently, like they're things like Ukrainian Ritalin, and he's the sort of guy that's so involved. He's got like this app that sells the drugs, and he's got a QR code tattooed to his head for his cryptocurrency and these types of things. So very interesting sort of character that's there for humor, I guess, too. The director, Marcos Bucay, 9 directing credits, a lot of TV specials. This looks to be his first feature debut, so obviously trusted across the Mexican screen industry. Some scenes. Let's talk about some scenes that worked. What are some scenes that didn't work? There's a scene where one of the tech dudes, they're at this tech party, I guess, and he's talking about buying half of the Isla Holbox and sinking because it's sinking, and he says there's no animals there, so he wants to do like a Jurassic Park sort of thing there. Absolutely ridiculous, but I really like the reference. It brought me back to good memories. Isla Holbox is such a beautiful location that I'm fortunate enough to have been to. We went there on our honeymoon, and it's just this little secluded island where you get a boat over there. There's no roads. Everyone gets around in sand buggies or dune buggies. It's just a nice little pristine place, which I'm sure since I've been there has probably been commercialized a lot more as well, which would be a little bit sad. And then again, there's another reference where I think it was Polo's girlfriend says, "I'm getting Tulum ready," and Tulum's another reference I get. It's a beach, and another place that is not too far from Isla Holbox, which it's a lot more touristy than Isla Holbox when I went there, but obviously I got the beach reference, and from memory I had some really good burritos. I think there was this restaurant called Amor Burrito, I think it was called, like Love Burritos or something like that. That was such a good burrito. I think I made my wife go back there twice because I enjoyed the burritos there so much. So these are more just references to Mexico that I enjoyed rather than the actual film. For the other thing, Blas ruins this app presentation, this big moment for the boys to make it big, and they have to go on the run a little bit and go hiding from the press and from the funders to their app. And the Adirali's drug dealer guy, they lock themselves in the office, and he brings out these drugs and says, it's got cyanide in it. I thought that was funny. That made me laugh. Apart from that, there's not much that stood out. I think there's a moment where at the start, Polo is in a gym class with his girlfriend, and there's a guy running this exercise on the bike class, and he's so over the top, and he says something along the lines of, I want to see your butts. I want you to get rectal selfies. Not funny, lame. Anytime Polo's girlfriend referred to him as fatty, which happened multiple times, just gross, just the fat shaming. The parallel universe almost scene where the boys are in the kitchen in the present time, and it's like they have this flashback to the night before where they got so high that they created this Sign Now app, which they don't remember, and they have all these drug rubbish infused conventions that you see in every stoner film that just didn't work for me. The whole bank that Polo has to go to, that's like a yoga retreat where they use VR, and to get a password for your account, you sing a song. Not funny. Especially maybe that just really didn't work for me because the songs that he does this twice in the film, at the start and right at the end. The lyrics to the song were in Spanish, and they didn't have a translation in English on the subtitle. So maybe if I knew the song or something, that would work a little bit more. So maybe more a local joke. Every piece of dialogue from Mate, that co-worker of Nat, and it was about like female genitalia or curved micro penises and things like that, or sexual references. It just wasn't funny and not needed and not funny. Polo eats an LSD-laced cookie at a work function, and he has all these visions of breastfeeding women and underwater mermen. Sort of, it was just bad, really bad. Again, a bit like the drugged out scene. Polo's girlfriend takes him to get a fecal matter test, and he gets colon cleansing, and they follow through with all these poo jokes and don't poo on the floor and I need to poo. Again, not funny. Adirales, the drug dealer guy, he sits down at one of these tech things, and one of the tech guys is like, my job is to take photos of girls in thongs, like G-strings. And Adirales is like, oh, well, you took that photo of my sister. You've got talent. It was just gross. Like, you don't say that about your sister. That was gross. And Polo's self-love viral video for his redemption arc, super lame, so bad. Anyway, themes, ideas. It's obviously trying to say a lot. I'm not sure it touches on it properly, but the idea of startup culture runs throughout, and the pressures in that business and that industry to make it, and social media and the addictions and new technologies and how to stay on top and stay in front of the game. That's all super important. Through our two main characters, the idea of friendship is super important, respecting each other and not taking credit all for yourself when you're a part of a team, and have a friend that you work so closely with, and obviously respecting too what makes your friend happy, especially if that's coffee making. The idea of values too, and finding yourself and who you are, and working out what that balance is, and the idea that you can't control everything. The toxic masculinity plays a big role in this, obviously, this industry and this workplace scene in the film too, so that's highlighted through. The fat shaming idea, apparently it's okay as long as the person getting bullied has a redemptive YouTube channel where they can say they're happy with themselves. I wasn't impressed with the way that was done. I'm being facetious. Activism and making the world a better place. That was the idea, or the original idea of this app, and obviously that's not what it actually turned into. And the importance of human contact rather than the likes or the hearts or the follows or all those types of reactions on social media, because society obviously has this obsession with self-gratification, and it's more important to reach out to actual people in real life. What did I take away from the film? There was this post-credit scene I thought was interesting. So it's this guy that comes up to Polo, and Polo's obviously now got his YouTube channel or his video streaming channel where he's doing really well. And this guy recognizes him and says, I'm trying to sell a streaming show or a streaming network called Dogflix. And it's the idea of a streaming video that dogs can just watch. I'm very intrigued as if this was added in by Netflix, almost in the subtitles, because obviously I don't speak Spanish, so I'm basing my understanding of the film on the subtitles, and I don't actually know what they were talking about, but I was reading some reviews where they mentioned this scene, and I felt like he was selling something else to do with dogs, so I'm intrigued. I'd love an answer to that. I don't have an answer. So if anyone speaks Spanish, Espanol, please let me know what the guy was actually trying to sell to Polo at the end. Was it called Dogflix? Because that does feel like a very Netflix-centric reference. Questions, ponderings, ideas. LinkedIn it played a big role in this film throughout. It's used through dialogue, as are many other apps, but it was almost as if you don't have a LinkedIn account, you're a failure. And I find that interesting. I don't have a LinkedIn account. Maybe it's because I'm not too keen on looking at different jobs and things like that, but is having a LinkedIn account a really important thing? It's a pondering that I've got after watching this film. Other than that, I'm ready to wrap this up. We give the films a rating out of 5. For me, I can't recommend this film, I don't think. It's super generic, and it lives and dies by the app references, and it's probably going to be indecipherable to audiences in 30 years' time. But I guess for the creators, at least they stuck with what they were going with, even if it doesn't really make it enjoyable or a decent film. I'm giving this a 1.5 out of 5. On the low end for me. We're on socials. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. The question I wanted to ask in relation to this film and I guess the technology and application side of things is is there a tech boom that you wish you invested in? Are you old enough to have invested in the .com boom and got out of that all right? Or for me, I really wish I got into ChatGPT early, even just to get an account, because I think you get a lifetime subscription. But the idea, is there something that you wished you got into before it sort of hit off? Other than that, we're going through this Christmas little thing. So we're having an episode every Monday and Thursday throughout December. Our next episode, we've got a 2021 action horror crime thriller vampire film called Blood Red Sky. This one's directed by Peter Thorwarth and stars Perry Boymeister, Roland Moller, Chidi Afu, Alexander Shear, and Dominic Purcell. Dominic Purcell, he's an Aussie, I'm pretty sure, from Prison Break. Anyway, that's what we've got for our next episode. Give it a watch before then if you're interested. Other than that, I will see you then.